Something else, you know that song, Baby, It's Cold Outside. In fact, it's record-breaking cold. Nearly 12,000, get that, 12,000 record low temperatures were set last year, and the new year is picking up where 2013 left off.
So much for global warming, Pat.
Yeah, that's...
Well, heavy snow is coming along with that cold weather, with a blizzard warning for Long Island and Boston expecting more than a foot of snow. Caitlin Burke has the story.
From the Midwest to the Northeast, people are starting off the new year thinking about snow. Nearly a foot has already fallen in Chicago, where residents are doing their best to dig out before the next round comes.
It does the job. It did the steps, it did the porch, now it's doing the car. You know, you make do with what you got right now.
In Northwest Ohio, many communities got more than 6 inches of snow in just 40 hours, making for dangerous road conditions.
Well, I know people get tired of us saying to slow down, but that's the best thing you can do.
I think this winter was worse than last winter.
Now that storm is headed towards the East Coast, where forecasters say 70 million people are in its path, preparing for blizzard-like conditions. In Connecticut, shelters are gearing up to help those in need.
There's been instances where people have frozen to death outside, sleeping on the park benches, and the temperature just too unbearable for them.
Salt trucks in New York worked late into the night prepping the roads. Crews are expected to work 16-hour shifts just to keep up with all the snow.
We're always worried about rush hour, and that's what it is. Don't be in a rush, though.
As much as a foot of snow is forecast through Friday, and temperatures are expected to continue to drop. Some areas seeing highs just above zero. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. It's been, I understand, 31 below zero in some places. It's really been cold around. It's going to hit us here in Virginia in Tidewater tomorrow, but it's not near as cold here as it is up in northeast. But
I spent a little time in Springfield, Missouri over the break, and it got down to like 12 degrees wind chill factor. So it was like around 18, but you felt like 12. So I experienced a little of that.
I went into Springfield on a little private plane, and we got hit by lightning, and it's a fun experience. I'm coming in, you think, you know, the devil doesn't want me to speak in Springfield. So we diverted to someplace else because we were afraid we might get knocked out of the air. Well, anyhow, the weather may be cold, but the stock market in America has been just sizzling hot. And the question is, will stocks keep up their record run? John Jessup has that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, Wall Street remains bullish on stocks for the new year, but investors are less enthusiastic about gold. Stocks shot up nearly 30% last year based on the S&P 500 index, the best gain since the mid-1990s. Analysts expect another strong move up in 2014, just not as powerful as last year. And many expect the economy to get stronger, which should also help stocks. But gold had its worst price drop in 32 years after 12 consecutive years of gains. Some investors expect gold to rebound, but they don't know when. Pat, why do you think gold has lost some of its shine?
Well, I think the question of financial easing, people were expecting that was going to cause inflation, and inflation, of course, is good for gold. When the big money guys stop buying, that sort of takes the steam out of the gold rush. I was reading today that there was a trader for Paul Tudor Jones's fund, the Tudor. It's a huge fund, but anyhow, the guy made $100 million. He bought puts on gold, and the puts paid off, and so his payday from that $100 million is going to be about $10 million. Like, here's a little kiss from your bosses. Thanks a lot. You did a good job.
Yeah, I'll say.
$100 million.
That's quite a profit.
I mean, I don't know. There's the things run in cycles, so I would think gold will probably be coming back up a little bit. But I've been shocked. I mean, the stock market is astounding. Of course, I've been in the markets. You have to be in the market, but if it is just the S&P has hit record levels. It's just astounding what's happening, and so there are a lot of people who've made a lot of money. And our president doesn't seem to like it. He always talks about the rich and the disparity and so forth. But the truth is the lower levels are going up and the higher levels are just going up a little faster. And guess who's back to number one?
Number one.
Rich. richest?
Warren Buffett?
No, Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, he's back.
He gave away a great deal of money, and then he took some of that Microsoft and he invested it in other funds, and he is just good. But he's on top of the heap
and,
now.
and he's very philanthropic.
Well, he's given away a huge amount of money.
Yes,
it's monstrous, but along with that, he's doing well. I don't know what he's going to do with all the money, but he sure has it. John, what's next?
Pat, another country could be facing a possible debt crisis, China. An official report out Monday showed that debt in local governments had shot up sharply since the end of 2010. And some analysts worry that situation is far worse than the report shows. Experts say China has enough money in its national savings to prevent a serious debt crisis from breaking out, but some say the situation is big enough to keep an eye on. Well, with the dawn of the new year, Israel faces a host of major challenges, from a nuclear Iran to negotiations with the Palestinians that could deal with lands of the Bible. Here's Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem.
Iranian media reported the Geneva Agreement may be implemented in late January, but the U.S. State Department says a few outstanding issues still need to be resolved. 6 world powers in Iran signed that agreement in November. It allows Iran to enrich uranium, but under tighter guidelines. It also eases economic sanctions on Iran. Whenever the agreement is implemented, some, like former Israeli ambassador to the UN Dori Gold, believe the Geneva deal is flawed.
What the Iranians want to do is undermine the sanctions as much as possible, so when they go into future negotiations with the U.S. and the P5+1 in general, there will be no leverage on the American side to extract concessions from Iran.
A bipartisan bill in the U.S. Senate would impose new sanctions if the final agreement allows Iran to enrich uranium. The White House said it would veto the legislation. In addition to Iran, Israel faces major decisions about the ongoing peace negotiations with the Palestinians. U.S. Secretary of State is here in Jerusalem for yet another round of meetings with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. Kerry set an ambitious deadline of late April 2014 to establish a framework for final negotiations. But Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat said if Israel continues building in the biblical lands of Judea and Samaria, known as the West Bank, the negotiations will be over. Erekat's statement follows the release of 26 Palestinian prisoners, most of them convicted murderers. The release, part of Kerry's plan, was celebrated by the Palestinian Authority and upset Israel.
Last night, we saw them celebrating, glorifying terrorists, people responsible for killing innocent civilians, for killing children. This is not the way to start a new year. The Palestinian Authority must stop glorifying murder. It must stop celebrating terrorism.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon is clinging to life today. Doctors say he's in critical condition as his kidneys are shutting down and other major organs are in decline. He's been in a coma since suffering a major stroke in 2006. Sharon is one of Israel's most famous generals, well known for his victories over the Egyptian army in the Sinai Desert during the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. He took a hard line on defending Israel and supporting Jewish settlements in Palestinian-controlled territory. But near the end of his career, he oversaw the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip, which is now controlled by Hamas. Pat?
Well, I'm sure we'll be sad at that, but frankly, I haven't understood why the Israelis have left him on life support this long. He had a devastating stroke. He's been in a coma, as you said. I mean, we're looking at going on, it's close to 10 years now. I mean, 7 or 8 years that he's been in this condition, and he couldn't have survived had it not been for just, life support being pumped into him. So we will mourn his passing. I was a friend. I got to know him. They had a luncheon in my honor, and he was the host. And then later on, I had a wonderful interview with him in his office. He was a great general, just a tremendous general, and he also, made that historic march to the Temple Mount, and then Yasser Arafat started the so-called Intifada on account of that. But he's a terrific guy, and I'm amazed that I guess they just didn't want a state funeral. The Israelis did not want a state funeral, so they left him in a comatose condition with tubes coming into him to kept him alive. But now there comes a time that that body just can't work on life support anymore. But anyhow, we will mourn his passing. I don't know when they're going to set the funeral, but we'll all grieve at the passing of this great man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. John?
Pat, it's now legal to buy marijuana for recreational use in Colorado. At least 24 pot shops opened in 8 towns January 1st, with thousands of people flocking to buy the drug.
I've been waiting 42 years for freedom.
Sold my house a couple months ago to prepare to move to Colorado.
We drove 17 hours to get here.
We want to be the Costco of marijuana.
But there was no shortage of skeptics worried retail pot would endanger the public. A group of addiction counselors and physicians say they're seeing more marijuana addiction problems, especially among the youth.
Some people think that marijuana is just psychologically addictive, not physically addictive. It's just a soft drug, something like that. But I can tell you from personal experience that these kids who come to see us are dropping out of life.
They worry the drug will be more widely available to teens, even though legal sales are limited to adults over 21. One addiction expert at the University of Colorado Hospital said legalizing pot is, quote, just throwing gas on the fire. Authorities also warn bringing it across state lines is against federal law. Well, vitamin E may slow the advance of Alzheimer's disease. A new study says taking high doses of vitamin E could fight mild to moderate Alzheimer's. It's the first study to show a treatment that changes the course of dementia at that stage, but that doesn't mean everyone should start taking lots of vitamin E to fight the disease. The director of medical and scientific operations for the Alzheimer's Association says no one should take vitamin E for Alzheimer's disease or other memory issues except under the supervision of a physician, because it can interfere with blood thinners, cholesterol drugs, and other medicines. Even so, many experts were happy with the new study. Researchers don't know how vitamin E may help, but it is an antioxidant, and it's found in foods like nuts, leafy green vegetables, grains, and others. About 5 million Americans have Alzheimer's. And Pat, while there probably will be many more tests on the effects of vitamin E, we here at CBN News have reported extensively on the promising effects of coconut oil.
Absolutely. I mean, we had, I think it's 5 million hits on our website dealing with coconut oil. But
I've started taking it too. I like the taste of it.
It's very nice.
The organic, and it's very coconutty.
I like to grill sandwiches with coconut oil.
I started grilling my fried eggs with coconut oil instead of the butter, and it's I don't know. I kind of miss the butter.
Butter tastes better. But anyhow, well, you know, this business about vitamins, I think that the medical association, the medical, whatever you call them, isn't quite together on what to do with vitamins. But the thing that there are 2 substances that really are good for the brain. One is choline, and another is inositol. The brain needs food, and I have personally take something called phosphatidylserine.
I never heard of that.
Well,
phosphatidylserine.
You see, if I can remember it, you know I'm right. Phosphatidylserine, and I also take acetyl L-carnitine, and the L-carnitine is again an activator of the brain. And then, of course, you got the coconut oil and so forth. But then you add with the acetyl L-carnitine a little bit of alpha-lipoic acid, and you put those all together.
Do you take E as well?
A little bit, but I'm not all hung up on E. I used to take a lot of E, but I don't think it's all that. The tests aren't really conclusive now on this, and it doesn't reverse it. But these other things, you want them to have a good memory, folks, write it down for the new year. Phosphatidylserine complex.
Wow.
You can get them at a vitamin store.
Don't ask me to spell that. All right. Thanks,
Just
Pat.
the way it sounds.
Good advice.
Phosphatidylserine.
Okay.
Okay.
Phosphatidylserine.
A record number of surgical abortion clinics in the U.S. closed in 2013. That's according to a survey by the pro-life organization Operation Rescue. The group found 87 clinics stopped performing surgical abortions. 81 permanently shut down, but 6 clinics still still sell abortion-inducing drugs. Their survey shows Texas has the most closures of surgical abortion clinics after an abortion law passed earlier in the year. Pennsylvania and Maryland also saw shutdowns because of new abortion clinic safety regulations. The Boy Scouts of America are kicking off their new policy allowing openly gay scouts. The organization made that decision last May, but it just took effect January 1st. The ban on gay adult leaders remains intact. Meanwhile, Christians unsettled by the new policy are offering two alternatives. Trail Life USA is just getting started with 425 troops pre-chartered. Board Chairman John Stemberger says he and other former Boy Scout leaders are concerned that the policy could lead to some gay scouts abusing younger boys. The Rural Rangers program is another alternative. The Assemblies of God has offered that option for more than 50 years. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.